What's up everybody, Corey here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Ganzo Firebird FH13. I actually stumbled across this knife on Amazon because Amazon knows that it should suggest that I buy knives. And two things caught my attention. One, the fact that it was $27.50, and two, the fact that it is in D2 steel. For those of you who aren't in the know, D2 is a pretty good steel for a budget knife. And you usually start seeing it around the $40 price point. So seeing it on a knife that was $27.50 kind of blew my mind, and I had to do some research and make sure that I wasn't reading something wrong or I wasn't misunderstanding something. And you know, I kind of bought this with the intention of, okay, this is going to be my beater knife. It's a $27 knife. It's got D2 steel, so it's going to have good edge retention. I'm just going to use it whenever I, might need to beat up a knife. And I gotta say, the action is extremely impressive, especially on the way down. This has not been modified in any way. This has not been lubed in any way. I mean, it just falls shut. And that's because, believe it or not, I actually ended up finding out, doing a little bit more research that, see if we can show you inside. It's probably a bad idea. Can't get in there. This is running on bearings, which is another interesting thing for a knife at this price point. But I don't want to get too much into that. You know, the takeaway there is that the action is, oh my gosh, it's surprisingly amazing. Let's talk about the pros here. So the very first pro is that this is $27.50. This is a great deal on a knife that's D2 steel, let alone the other benefits of this knife that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. The action is, like I said, it's absolutely crazy. The fact that it just falls shut. It's really good. It deploys 100% of the time. It falls shut. I'm totally impressed with that. Let's talk about value for $27.50. Again, what are you getting here? We're looking at D2 steel. We're looking at a ball bearing pivot. We're looking at these chamfered outer edges so that it's smooth. Okay, these are smooth on the outside. We've got a deep carry pocket clip here, and all of these things really make this a simple, straightforward decision for your average Joe. You know, a relatively inexpensive knife with a relatively good steel and relatively good features, smooth edges, comfortable to use, a deep carry pocket clip. There's, like, on the checklist of knife stuff, there's not really a lot left to ask for. The flipper tab, I would consider this relatively small. I would say that this is an unobtrusive flipper tab. It also is actually a frame lock. It's not a liner lock. This is a stainless steel knife, and they did a frame lock with it. That's another thing that's actually really interesting. You don't see a lot of stainless steel frame locks out there. Another thing I'll say, in terms of frame locks, you don't really have to worry about pressure too much here when you're deploying the knife. You know, a lot of frame locks have this issue where if you're putting any pressure on the frame itself, it's really hard to deploy the knife. But I have never had any problems deploying this knife, and I've never had to think about my hand placement. In terms of fit and finish, the knife is just put together well. You know, these screws are not flush. But I don't think they were supposed to be flush because this pivot's not flush. It's just clearly not what they were going for there. So I don't know if I can complain about that. The things that they wanted to be flush were flush. So I think there are conscious design choices here for the things that are not flush. I don't think that's something that is a mistake. Centering is absolutely perfect. Didn't have to do anything there to make sure the knife was centered. There is actually another thing that's very interesting. You've got this backspacer here, but there's a lanyard hole cut out for it. I guess I wouldn't call it a hole. I'd call it a lanyard gap. They've got this pin in here, and they cut out the backspacer such that if you wanted to, you could put a lanyard through there. And that's another thing that I actually really like, because once again, this is not an accident. This is a conscious decision that they decided to put on this $27 knife. And that's pretty awesome. That's telling me that they were really thinking about this when they designed it. They could have just put the backspacer there and called it a day, but they didn't do that. That's interesting. And then finally, I will say another thing in terms of them just thinking properly. Let's turn the flash on here. Look in there. These handles are skeletonized, which they did to reduce the weight of the knife. Again, at this price point, it's not that a skeletonized handle is amazing in and of itself. It's that level of thought on a $27 knife is what's amazing. In terms of the downsides, every knife has its downsides. The pocket clip is extremely stiff. This is very uncomfortable to flex. It actually really hurts my finger. The ramp makes it adequate for slipping into your pants, but when you're pulling it out, this is so stiff and it's locked down so hard. It's gotten caught on my pants a few times. These edges on the pocket clip are actually quite sharp, and because of that, and the same goes for the inside, if you're twisting it at all when you're trying to pull it out of your pocket, those edges can really grind up on your pants and they can get caught on things. The pocket clip is not adjustable in any way. This is right-handed tip up carry. Don't like it, too bad. Can't move the pocket clip. I don't really have any qualms because I'm a right-handed person, but you know, that's just something to be aware of. Inside these handles here, this is actually relatively uncomfortable. All along the knife, the insides here are not chamfered, so that's actually, it's pretty uncomfortable. I've seen worse knives, but that's pretty uncomfortable. I will say right here where the flipper tab sits, they chamfered that, so if you want to hold the knife like this with a saber grip, this is totally comfortable. However, as soon as we get up here to this jimping is extremely aggressive. It is not comfortable in the least. If you're trying to get a good grip on this knife, I mean, this really digs into your thumb real good. So, you know, if you're using gloves, that might be okay. That might be something that you would actually lock. So the jimping is pretty aggressive. And then finally, because this is a frame lock, there is a quality of frame locks that you need to be conscious of, and that quality is over travel. See, if I wanted to, I could bend this frame lock past the frame, and I don't really want to do any more than I'm doing right now. And the reason that you can do that is that on the inside, there's no over travel stop. On a lot of the more expensive frame locks, there's basically a piece of metal inserted there that won't let you push this past the handle. And the reason they do that is because if you bend this back, and you bend it back permanently, badly enough, you're going to mess with the lockup on the knife. And that's clearly bad for many reasons. Also, I didn't mention it in the good, but there's no blade play. You know, I guess I'll say that's not a bad quality, is that there's no blade play, since I'm talking about the cons here. But other than that, that's really all there is in terms of the bad. You know, and none of that is egregious for a $27 knife. For $27, I wouldn't expect half of the things that they did on this. I wouldn't expect the centering to be perfect. I wouldn't expect the pocket clip to be deep carry. I wouldn't expect the lanyard gap to be cut out of the backspacer. I wouldn't expect the action to be good. I wouldn't expect it to be on bearings. So the fact that all I can really say is that the jimping's a little too aggressive and that the inner edges aren't chamfered, that's not a problem at this price point. These are not things to complain about when you're paying $27 for a knife. All things considered, this is an amazing knife for the price. The pros, in my opinion, far outweigh the cons, and they tell a very specific story. To me, the pros that we have here show an attention to detail when we're talking about, you know, skeletonizing the handles. Things like that on a $27 knife. It's just not something that you see. That tells me that there was thoughtful design intent from this manufacturer. You know, in terms of the cons, those are just a result of producing a knife at this price point. It's the kind of finish that you wouldn't expect anyways on a $27 knife. So I really can't be upset for that. I didn't buy this knife expecting it to have a bunch of frills and all of the extra finishing touches. You know, while nice, it's not something that you're even looking for in a $27 knife. So, you know, if you're looking for a budget knife that will serve you well, I don't think this is going to disappoint you. For the money that you pay, God, the action alone is satisfying. The action alone literally rivals my $240 ZT. I mean, that blows my mind. So, gosh, I hope you found this useful. I don't want to sound too biased, but damn, this thing is just impressive for $27.50. So hope you liked it. Hope this helped you make a decision, and I will see you guys next time. Once again, this is the Ganzo Firebird FH13. See you later.